Hello friends, today we are doing another Flutes of New York sponsored review. The Flutes of New York and I team up once a month to do this for you guys. This time we have a really interesting one. I will save that for after a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you who have been around for a while and you know how these reviews work, just skip on over ahead to when the review actually starts. But if you have not experienced the Flutes of New York sponsored reviews by yours truly, here's how it works. I do have a code, and the code is JAF, and if you use this code to purchase a flute through the Flute Center of New York, you get the following perks. 1, domestic shipping within the US. 2, an extended 10-day trial is usually only 7 days. 3, you get an extended 18-month warranty on your new flutes. And 4, you can take up to 3 instruments out on trial at a time. Now, just to be completely transparent, I do earn a small commission on each flute that is purchased through the Flute Center of New York using my code JAF. Just know that you're helping a girl out. You may have noticed that I talked about trials. If you want to take a flute out on trial, all you have to do is contact the Flute Center of New York directly via email or phone. I'll put a link to their contact info in the bottom bar below. All you have to do is give them my code, tell them which flutes you would like to take out on trial, and they will take care of things from there. Just be sure that you're actually in the market to buy a flute though when you ask for trials, because it doesn't really help anyone out if you're not actually going to buy a flute. You'll also be charged the shipping up front for trials, but it will be refunded back to you once you return the flutes. The Flute Center of New York also does price match any other authorized dealers, so you'll always know you're getting the best bang for your buck. Now, when you're trying flutes, make sure you take off all rings and dangly jewelry that can potentially scratch the flute. Never use the polishing cloth, the cleaning gauze, or the cleaning rod that comes with each new flute because they are not yours yet. Please don't get your slobber on something that will potentially belong to someone else. The Flute Center of New York will have to replace it. And lastly, a disclaimer: like in Harry Potter, just as the wand chooses the wizard, so the flute chooses the flutist. My job here is just to describe to the best of my ability how these flutes like to be played, at least with my mouth formation. So it really is up to you guys to decide for yourselves what flute will match you the best. Try these. So without further ado, let's get right into this review. Today, we're going to be reviewing a very new flute. Prior to Julian, who is one of the people that I work with very closely at the Flute Center of New York, prior to Julian telling me about this flute, I had no idea it even existed. This is the Eastman 420SE-BO. First impressions. When I opened the flute, it was still in its plastic packaging. Typically, you only see it in its plastic packaging if it came fresh from the factory. So not only were all the flute pieces in the plastic packaging, the entire flute itself, like the case, was actually in its own cardboard box. Plus, the box itself was taped. I was the first person ever to unbox this flute. Normally, I'm not the first person to actually touch these flutes. Usually, the Flute Center of New York has already opened it, tested it, and stuff like that. But they sent this one to me like totally new. I couldn't believe it. Fun fact, my finger slipped and my scissors that I was using to open this box actually cut into my finger. It looks like it's healing quite nicely, but I may have bled a little bit for this flute. Julian actually sent me a whole write-up of, the background of Eastman flutes. So I'm just gonna read that. Owned by flutist FCNY, Eastman Music Company acquired Haynes in February of 2004, after a very rocky time in Haynes' history. During this time, ownership of the company was passed from person to person after a series of deaths of the company's top flute makers. Ooh. That's real rough. He's telling me to feel free to consult this timeline to do more research into the company's history. So I'll leave that link for you guys down below for those of you who are interested in looking. It's actually on the Haynes website. Ooh, that's very interesting. They even include a model of the flute that they came out with at that point. That's so cool. And then they have like a little blurb about like what happened that year or around that time. We were talking about somewhere around 2004, so we're gonna go up until then. The Eastman Music Company purchases William S. Haynes Company. Flutist FCNY owns Eastman. When he came to Boston from Beijing, China in 1991 to study the flute, Ni was directed by his teacher to purchase a headjoint to improve his sound. Anxious to develop an American sound, he found himself at the William S. Haynes Company. When the Haynes Company came available, Mr. Ni loved that he had a chance to purchase the venerable Haynes Company, so he acquired the company. So this guy who purchased the Haynes Company is a flutist himself. Oh, 2009, James Galloway visits the Haynes Company to choose a flute. He picks up a 19.5 carat rose gold flute and plays it for an encore that evening with the Boston Symphony. We're basically looking at a flute made by the Eastman Company. So it's the company that owns Haynes. Back to Julian's email. Suffice to say that for a period of years preceding Eastman's purchase of Haynes, sales plummeted to zero, as the product lost the ability to compete against the Powell and Brannan juggernauts they are. That is exactly what they are. As well as the increased number of imported Japanese brands. Eastman's buying of Haynes was a lifeline for this venerable American company. It took years to recover, but a series of new hires of high-profile flute makers eventually allowed the brand to roar back into the position it is in today. Again, one of the premier flute makers in America, which I would agree with. They are absolutely up there with Powell and Brannan and all those ones. The Eastman flutes are in many ways similar to Amadeus, though they are considerably less expensive, and most of them have Y arms instead of pointed arms. Y arms means that they don't have these like fancy pointed ones. Does it change the sound? No, it doesn't. It does not change the sound at all. It's just literally a cosmetic thing. They are made in the same factory in Beijing as the Amadeus flutes, though the head joints are not made in Boston like the Amadeus head joints. The flutes are great. It's our newest line at the Flute Center of New York. And he's so right. It is so new that it is not even online yet. I tried looking for it for you guys because I'm supposed to link it in the bottom bar below, but I cannot right now. Now, let's talk about the packaging. It comes in your pretty typical like French model case. This is made with like woven synthetic material. I don't know what it's made of, so I'm not just gonna like make it up in front of you guys. I feel like it's very durable. Comes with a wooden cleaning rod, and it comes with plugs for the open holes. There is a shoulder strap to this, but unlike other flutes that I typically try, even though this strap is removable, it's not being stuffed into the front pocket. Usually it's stuffed into the front pocket, but I noticed that what they did was they tightened it so that it sits flush against the case when you're not using it. So then you have a lot more space inside of this front pocket to put more things in, because you can never run out of things to stuff in your flute case. The other thing I noticed about the shoulder strap is that it has a shoulder pad. I do like that they've given it quite a bit of thought to make this comfortable for transportation. The inside is like a white plush material, very, very typical of flute cases. And then in here you have your typical French model case, so you have to click the buttons off to the side and then the whole thing opens. The inside is this like really gorgeous like burgundy velvet. It also comes with a silver saber. They did stitch on their logo here, which I thought was really cute. Whoever designed that did a very good job. The other thing that it comes with is the warranty. They tell you to go to eastmanwins.com to activate your warranty. Thank you for purchasing an Andreas Eastman product. Welcome to the Eastman family. They did not include a cleaning gauze or a polishing cloth. I did find that a little bit unusual, but then again, those two things are really cheap and you can just get them yourself. Before we get into actually playing around with the instrument, we have to talk about these specs. So the specs are not online. I am literally reading it from the invoice itself. This is the Eastman EFL 420SE-BO. The way that Julian described it to me was the 420SE-BO, and I think the SE means split E. We have here an intermediate flute, silver hand-cut head joint. Hand-cut head joint, very cool. Sterling silver body and silver-plated mechanism, Y arms, open hole, B foot, offset G, split E mechanism. Now let's start noodling around. Time to get my lovely drawing out again. We are looking at the cross section of your mouth. This is not anatomically correct, and I am aware of it, but this is just how I am envisioning what is happening inside of my mouth while I'm playing this thing. We've got here your lips. We've got here your teeth. We've got here your tongue, and this section up here is the roof of your mouth. Now that we know what we're looking at, let's talk about how this flute feels like. I am envisioning a kind of hollow ball sitting like this inside of my mouth. Notice that it's taking up the bottom 2/3 of my mouth. I don't feel much happening in this general area. It's almost like negative space in my mouth there. What this does is it causes the hollow behind your bottom front teeth right here to kind of like hollow out a little bit more. It sits right pretty low. One of the first things I noticed about the lip hole was how square it was. The rims are very sharp. Like looking at it, I already knew it's going to be like super free blowing. But what took me by surprise was that, yes, you are envisioning this hollow ball in your mouth, but when your airstream hits it, I'm not imagining that ball moving or anything. It's just kind of stationary. Air is coming out from here. For low notes, I find it just goes straight through the top of the ball. Interesting, right? You would think that it would go through like the bottom of the ball, but it doesn't. Normally, I expect low notes to kind of vibrate more around like my bottom lip, but this makes my top lip vibrate. To me, it's a little bit counterintuitive, but it works like a charm. The lower register speaks on this thing like not quite almost anything else I've ever tried. And it's because you don't have to dig so low. It's all happening up here, which I feel is a lot easier to control. As you can probably imagine, for higher notes, you are hitting a lower part of the ball. For the highest notes, you feel like your airstream has to go under the ball and out of your mouth. Based on how this flute feels when I play it, I feel like if you had a bigger mouth than me, this would feel even better. I think the highest notes won't be as hard as they are on me. They do sound a little squeezed when I play them on this flute. I personally don't have a lot of space down here left after the ball is already sitting like that far low for me, right? But if you had a bigger mouth, I feel like you would have more room down there. So getting the higher notes out won't be as much of an issue. Now let's do some harmonics. That confirms my suspicion. For the absolute highest notes, I feel like I literally have to like open my mouth more. I literally go from playing in my normal position to like, that will create that extra space under the ball that I need. I really think if you have a larger mouth than me, you won't have to do that as much as I have to. Prior to trying it just now, I was actually having a lot of trouble getting that 7th harmonic out. Now I know. Everything else just like, did you hear that like low C? Like, oh my gosh, it should not be that easy. Now let's talk about tone color. Now that we have figured out what sort of the default mode of this flute is, now it's easy to play around with it. I just had to do that low C again. Like, oh my gosh, freaking love it. Back to B. Very, very simple. All you do is you take that ball. If you want a hollow tone, you squeeze the sides. If we're looking at it from the front, you're squeezing it in like that. Squeeze that in. As you can probably imagine, in order to get a rich sound, you do the opposite. Make it wider, as wide as you can. This ball will end up being more like that. So you see how bottom heavy that is? That's kind of how it feels in my mouth, at least. I find that I have to stretch it out so far that even my lips have to stretch out with it. I think it's because my mouth is too small for this, actually. It's not impossible for, you know, a person with a small mouth. As you can tell, I am playing this quite easily, actually. But it's just that you have to stretch your mouth out more for certain things. Us small people always know how to make up for our smallness. You get very resourceful when you're really short and you can't reach that thing on top of the refrigerator. You know what I mean? Dynamics. Let's get to playing them on this flute. Yet again, if you have a larger mouth, you're gonna have a much easier time of this than I am. For fortes, you want to make the ball as big as possible. Now, because my mouth is on the smaller end of the scale, I feel like I need to lift my soft palate and the hollow behind my bottom front teeth. So I need to lift that. So I need to literally give myself more space, and then I need to make the ball even bigger. This flute can take a lot. So if you have a larger mouth, this will be able to withstand like a huge amount of air going into it. Conversely, to play piano, what you do is you make this ball super small and you bring it really forward. So I feel like it's as forward as out here. I've never drawn the center of your air activity out that far. As you can tell, it is not even anywhere near your teeth. It's literally just like this little ball of air between your lips. This is regardless of register. You are, however, still hitting that tiny ball in different spots depending on which register you're in. So if you are playing a low notes, you would be hitting that tiny ball through the top portion. For high notes, you would be hitting it through the bottom portion. I find that doing dynamics on this flute is probably one of the easiest out of most flutes I've tried. Now for the mechanism. Let's give this a whirl. We're going to do F major, slurred 2 octaves, and also in thirds. So there I was trying to remember to go counterintuitive than what I normally want to do. Because normally I want to go low here and then go high and then go low. But I need to go low, high, low. C5 trill and the C6 trill. B flat lever. Gizmo. The mechanism is the Goldilocks of everything I've tried so far. It's not light, but it's not resistant either. They're all very even and it feels very stable. There is some bounce, but not a lot of bounce. The trill keys have more bounce, which I guess is more important for the trill keys to have more bounce anyway. This will be very good for students. This type of mechanism will kind of smooth out your technique because it won't be as responsive as something that's like crazy bouncy or crazy light. I do have to mention though that the low C and low B keys are much narrower than I am used to. It was a little bit challenging for me to find the right spot to press down on the C key to make sure I was actually sealing the key. It's not that it's leaking, it's not leaking. It's very narrow and it doesn't stick out very much at all from the B key next to it and the C sharp key that's below it. For some reason, the spacing of these keys feels huge to me. I play a Brannon normally, and Brannons feel tiny compared to other flutes, which I guess, you know, that's why it would fit me because I'm a tiny person. As you can tell from what I've been saying in this review, if you have a larger mouth, you're probably a bigger person than me, which probably means that you have bigger hands than me, which probably means that you will have absolutely no problem with the spacing of these keys. I think it's because I'm stretching so much, I can't feel how far down I need to depress it in order for the key to actually be closed. That's just me though, but I thought I would point that out for those of you who do have small hands. You may want to get something like a thumb port to kind of act as an extension for your hand. I did not put my own thumb port on this. I'm not testing that because I don't want my thumb port to accidentally scratch this flute. But my suspicion is that a thumb port would definitely help. Last but not least, let's look at articulation. We are going to do single tongue F major. Now we're going to do double tongue. Let's talk first single tongue. Based on the fact that there's so much activity going on in the front of your mouth, have you noticed that I haven't talked about anything happening in the back half of your mouth? All the action is in the front of your mouth. Your tongue then has to match that. Typically it does. It does something similar to a different flute that I tried before, but it's so far forward and it's doing what I'm calling faux French tonguing. Real French tonguing is when you tongue from between your lips. And then what I have termed faux French tonguing is when you do it from between your teeth. Now here, it is pretty much faux French tonguing, but the tongue is resting more against the bottom teeth. I am doing my best here, guys. Doing my best. As you can see, it goes straight through the hollow ball, but it does not seem to obstruct the airflow at all. In fact, this is the only way for it to not, one, sound muddy, or two, sound thumpy. If it sounds muddy, it usually means that your tongue is too far forward. If it sounds thumpy, it usually means your tongue is too far back. Now, for double tonguing, I find that I have to bring my tongue like up here for the K sound. For double tonguing, you're going ta-ka, ta-ka, ta-ka. So here, you have to think of it as ta-ka, ta-ka. So the ta is like between a T and a TH, and then the ka, it's like a fake K. This flute plays so forward that if you make any kind of contact right here with the roof of your mouth, you're going to get that thumpy sound. But the thing is, you can't not make this movement when you're double tonguing. You have to go tuka tuka tuka. The only way to remedy the thumping sound that can potentially happen by doing double tonguing this way is to do it so light that you're pretty much not actually doing it. If you can tongue this light for double tonguing, it also means that you can go really fast, because that means that you don't have to do the full motion. And there we have it, guys. That is my review of this lovely Eastman 420 flute. Let's now talk about how much it costs. So the grand total for this flute is $2,410. Good price. If you're looking for an intermediate model flute that you can audition into music school with, I actually think this one can do it. It has that power that would be extremely impressive, especially the low register. That's it, guys. I had so much fun doing this. If you guys want to see something else from the Flute Center of New York, please put it in the comment section below. Both the Flute Center of New York and I read your comments. Make sure you follow the Flute Center of New York on their Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I will put links to their social media accounts in the bottom bar below. You can follow me on my social media accounts, which are also listed below. My last video is playing right here, which I will put a link to up here for you guys. If you liked what you saw, make sure you give me a big thumbs up and hit subscribe for new videos every Saturday. But really, you should hit the bell icon too, because the subscribe button is very broken on YouTube right now. But otherwise, I'll see you guys next week. Bye. What did I even say in my notes? I apologize for like profusely sweating. Apparently, this is my workout for today.